Some graves hide bones, but these graves hide the darkest secrets of women who killed without mercy. Tonight, we uncover the hidden resting places of history's deadliest female killers. Number 1. Irina Gaidamachuk. Irina Gaidamachuk, remembered in Russia as Satan in a Skirt, was convicted of murdering 17 elderly women between 2002 and 2010. She posed as a social worker, gaining entry into the homes of vulnerable pensioners before attacking them with an axe or hammer. Her crimes went unnoticed for years, scattered across small towns in the Sverdlovsk region, where each death was written off as a tragic burglary. When finally caught, her chilling statement shocked investigators. She admitted she had lost count of her victims after 10. Irina was sentenced to 20 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed for women in Russia at the time. She died behind bars in 2021 at the age of 46, reportedly from untreated health issues. Her body was never returned to her family. Like many disgraced convicts in Russia, her remains were buried quietly by prison authorities, in a section reserved for the forgotten. No marker, no ceremony, just a patch of earth that ensures no memorial could ever form around her name. The graves of her victims are tended by grieving families, while the grave of their killer is lost to anonymity. In the end, the woman who terrorized communities with death and fear was denied even the dignity of remembrance. A final, hidden grave for the so-called Satan in a Skirt. Number 2. Vera Renczi, the Black Widow. Vera Renczi, infamously dubbed the Black Widow of Romania, reportedly poisoned as many as 35 victims in the 1920s. 2 husbands, a son, and dozens of lovers, claiming each was unfaithful or abandoning her. Her wine cellar was a chilling shrine of death, housing over 30 zinc-lined coffins. Inside, decaying bodies lay entombed, her silent testimony to jealousy and control. She was arrested after the suspicious wife of one missing lover demanded answers. Vera confessed to delivering arsenic and even strychnine in some cases. She revealed she sometimes sat among the coffins, drinking champagne, whispering to her dead, rituals born from madness and obsession. In court, she was convicted of murder. Though sentenced to death, she escaped execution mostly because Yugoslavia at the time did not execute women. Instead, she was imprisoned for life, later confined to a mental asylum, where she died, forgotten, likely in 1960. There is no known grave for Vera Renczi. Her body vanished into anonymity on her final date with reality. While her victims rest, their identities remembered by grieving families, hers remains a blank plot, unmarked, unvisited, an empty crypt of infamy lost to time. Number 3. Belle Gunness, Hell's Belle. Belle Gunness, a Norwegian immigrant in early 1900s America, built her reputation as one of the most prolific female killers in history. On her Indiana farm, she lured lonely men through personal ads, promising love and marriage. Dozens responded, bringing savings and valuables with them. None were ever seen alive again. Neighbors whispered about men arriving at Belle's farmhouse, but no one leaving. When authorities finally searched the grounds in 1908, the soil revealed its secrets. More than 40 bodies were unearthed, including those of suitors, children, and even her own foster daughter. Belle had turned her farmland into a graveyard, a place where love letters became death sentences. The most enduring mystery surrounds her own fate. A fire consumed her farmhouse, and inside investigators found the body of a woman without a head. Was it Belle? Or had she staged her own death and vanished with her fortune? Forensic experts of the time could not confirm the corpse's identity, and speculation persists to this day. Her supposed grave is a charred mystery, an unverified plot without certainty. Meanwhile, the victims rest in scattered graves across Indiana, each one a testament to greed and betrayal. Belle Gunness' legacy endures not just in her crimes, but in the unanswered question: did Hell's Belle escape her own inferno? Number 4. Jane Toppan, Jolly Jane. Jane Toppan, remembered as Jolly Jane, was a nurse in Massachusetts at the end of the 19th century. Outwardly cheerful, she hid a fascination with death that turned hospitals and private homes into hunting grounds. She confessed to killing at least 31 people, though experts believe the true number may have been closer to 100. Her method was chillingly intimate. She poisoned patients and employers with morphine and atropine, then lay beside them as they slipped away. For Jane, it was not money or revenge, it was pleasure. She admitted she wanted to kill more people than any other man or woman who ever lived, and spoke openly of the thrill she felt watching life fade from her victims' eyes. Her crimes unraveled in 1901, when a family she worked for grew suspicious after a series of sudden deaths. Autopsies revealed poisoning, and Jane finally confessed in a torrent of disturbing detail. Declared insane, she was committed to the Taunton Insane Hospital, where she remained until her death in 1938. Jane Toppan's grave is unmarked within a Massachusetts cemetery. Unlike her victims, buried with names mourned by families, her resting place carries no tribute. The woman who sought fame through death was left with anonymity in the soil, her final silence reflecting the horror she once delighted in creating. Number 5. Dagmar Overby, the Angel of Death. Dagmar Overby, a Danish woman active in the early 20th century, earned the grim title, the Angel of Death. Between 1913 and 1920, she murdered infants entrusted to her care, children of unmarried mothers who believed she would provide safe foster homes. Instead, Dagmar turned their innocence into tragedy. She suffocated and drowned the babies, sometimes burning their tiny bodies in her stove or hiding them in lofts and attics. Investigators estimated she killed between 9 and 25 children, including one of her own. For years, the crimes were hidden under a cloak of poverty and desperation, until one grieving mother reported her suspicions. The authorities unearthed the horror that had been unfolding quietly in Copenhagen. Dagmar was tried in 1921, a case that shocked Denmark and reverberated across Europe. Her calm demeanor in court contrasted with the monstrous cruelty of her acts. She was sentenced to death, but her punishment was later commuted to life imprisonment, making her one of the most infamous women in Scandinavian history. When she died in 1929, her burial was handled in secrecy. No marked stone carries her name, no memorial exists. She vanished into an unremarkable grave, a final attempt to erase the woman who had stolen so many lives before they had even begun. The Angel of Death now lies among the forgotten, her resting place as hidden as the infants she betrayed. Number 6. Lucy Letby, the Killer Nurse. Lucy Letby, once seen as a caring neonatal nurse in the United Kingdom, became the face of betrayal inside the hospital ward. Between 2015 and 2016, she was convicted of murdering 7 infants and attempting to kill several more at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Her crimes shattered the very trust placed in caregivers of the most vulnerable. Her methods were subtle and cruel. She injected air into tiny veins, tampered with feeding tubes, and poisoned babies with insulin. Each attack left grieving parents bewildered, told their children's deaths were natural or unexplained. For a time, her role as a nurse shielded her from suspicion, until patterns emerged and every tragic incident seemed to circle back to one name: Letby. When the evidence mounted, Letby remained expressionless, denying involvement even as heartbreaking testimonies filled the courtroom. In 2023, she was handed a rare whole-life order, ensuring she will never leave prison. Her trial reignited debate about accountability within medical systems and the unimaginable reality of a caregiver turned predator. As for her final resting place, it does not yet exist. One day, her body will be buried by the state in an unmarked grave, like many of Britain's most reviled criminals. No flowers, no family monument, just an anonymous patch of earth, ensuring her name finds no sanctuary even in death. Number 7. Joanna Dennehy, the Thrill Killer. Joanna Dennehy shocked Britain in 2013 when her brief but brutal killing spree left 3 men dead. Unlike many killers driven by greed or revenge, Dennehy murdered for excitement. She later admitted she killed simply because it made her feel alive. Over just 10 days, she lured her victims with charm before stabbing them repeatedly and leaving their bodies in ditches around Cambridgeshire. 2 other men survived her attacks, though left scarred for life. After the killings, she posed for photographs, laughing and mocking the law, and even boasted about how easy it was to take a life. Her lack of remorse unsettled even seasoned detectives. Experts who studied her case described her as a rare example of a female thrill killer. Someone who murdered not for money, power, or revenge, but purely for the adrenaline rush. Her court proceedings revealed chilling details of her sadistic nature, while psychologists pointed out her manipulative control over accomplices who helped cover her crimes. Sentenced to a whole-life order, Dennehy became only the 3rd woman in the UK to face such a penalty, ensuring she will never be released. When her time finally comes, her remains will almost certainly be placed in an anonymous grave, hidden from public view. The woman who sought attention through violence will vanish in silence, denied the stage she once craved. Number 8. Rose West, The House of Horrors. Rosemary Rose West, alongside her husband Fred, turned their Gloucester home into one of Britain's darkest crime scenes. Behind the facade of an ordinary marriage lay years of sadistic abuse, torture, and murder. Together, they lured vulnerable young women, many runaways, promising them safety. Instead, these women were subjected to unimaginable cruelty before being buried beneath the floors and in the garden of 25 Cromwell Street, forever earning it the title, The House of Horrors. Rose's evil did not stop with strangers. She participated in the sexual abuse of her own children and stepchildren, turning the household into a chamber of terror. When police finally uncovered the horrors in 1994, the remains of 9 victims were found, though investigators believe there were more whose bodies have never been located. In court, Rose displayed a cold defiance, denying her role even as the evidence mounted. Fred hanged himself before trial, leaving her to face justice alone. She was sentenced to a whole life order, one of the few women in British history never to be released. When she dies, Rose West will not be laid to rest beside her family or her husband. Like other notorious criminals in the UK, her body will be buried in secrecy, her grave unmarked. The woman who buried so many lives in darkness will herself be consigned to the anonymity of a hidden grave. Number 9. Myra Hindley, the Moors murderer. Myra Hindley, remembered as Britain's most hated woman, joined her partner Ian Brady in what became known as the Moors murders. Between 1963 and 1965, they kidnapped, tortured, and murdered 5 children, recording some of their crimes on audio tapes. The young victims were buried in shallow graves across the desolate Saddleworth Moor, leaving families haunted by the uncertainty of never recovering all their loved ones. Hindley's cold, bleached hair mugshot became the face of evil for an entire generation. She was not a passive accomplice. She played an active role in luring children and concealing their remains. Her participation shattered the image of femininity as nurturing, replacing it with something chillingly predatory. She was sentenced to life imprisonment and spent the remainder of her days behind bars, attempting multiple times to gain parole. Each attempt met with public outrage. Hindley died in 2002 at the age of 60. Her burial was carried out under heavy secrecy. Authorities cremated her body, and her ashes were scattered at night in an undisclosed location. No marker, no place for mourners, and no shrine for the curious. The woman who left children lost on the moors was herself denied a grave to be found, her final disappearance echoing the fate she inflicted on others. Number 10. Beverley Allitt, the Angel of Death. Beverley Allitt, a nurse at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in England, earned the notorious title, the Angel of Death. In 1991, during just 59 days on a children's ward, she attacked 13 young patients, murdering 4 and leaving the rest with life-altering injuries. Parents entrusted their sick children to her care, never imagining the nurse at their bedside was the source of their suffering. Her methods were insidious. Allitt injected her tiny victims with insulin or air, causing sudden collapses that confused doctors. Suspicion only grew when the pattern of unexplained cardiac arrests was linked to her shifts. Even after she was finally confronted, Allitt showed no emotion, maintaining the guise of innocence. In court, she was diagnosed with Munchausen's syndrome by proxy, a disorder driving her to harm those under her care in order to gain attention. The trial exposed not only her crimes, but also the vulnerabilities in hospital systems that allowed her to operate unchecked for weeks. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, one of the harshest penalties ever given to a female nurse in Britain. Allitt remains incarcerated at Rampton Secure Hospital. When her death eventually comes, her burial will follow the path of other reviled killers. An unmarked grave, anonymous and hidden. The woman who stole childhoods will vanish quietly, denied any place of remembrance, her name buried deeper than the children she betrayed. Number 11. Dorothea Puente, the Death House Landlady. Dorothea Puente, the seemingly kind landlady of a Sacramento boarding house, hid a chilling secret beneath her Victorian home. In the 1980s, she preyed on elderly and disabled tenants, cashing their social security checks while they mysteriously disappeared. Neighbors saw her tending the garden, never suspecting that the soil concealed her victims. Police were first alerted when a tenant vanished, and suspicion turned toward Puente. A search of her backyard revealed 7 bodies buried in shallow graves, their remains wrapped and hidden like discarded refuse. Investigators later tied her to at least 9 murders, though the true number may never be known. Dorothea presented herself as a grandmotherly figure, cooking meals and smiling warmly, but beneath the surface lay greed and cruelty. In court, she denied the killings, insisting she merely took in people society had abandoned. The jury, however, saw the truth. She had turned her boarding house into a trap for the vulnerable. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Puente died in 2011 at the age of 82. Her body was buried in a California cemetery, her grave unmarked to prevent it from becoming a site of morbid fascination. Today, her house still stands, known locally as the Murder House, while her own resting place remains hidden, just as she ensured her victims would be. Number 12. Aileen Wuornos, the Highway Killer. Aileen Wuornos, one of America's most infamous female serial killers, stalked Florida highways between 1989 and 1990. A sex worker with a violent past, she lured men under the pretense of transactional encounters, then shot and killed them. She claimed each act was self-defense against rape, but prosecutors painted a different picture, a pattern of calculated murder and robbery. 7 men were confirmed dead at her hands. Wuornos' life story, marked by abandonment, abuse, and years of poverty, added complexity to her crimes. Her chilling confessions, often delivered with rage and bitterness, fascinated the media and turned her into a symbol of female violence rarely seen in modern America. She was convicted and sentenced to death. In 2002, Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. Her final words were bizarre and haunting, a ramble about returning to Earth with Jesus on a spaceship. Her demeanor at the end only deepened her image as a figure teetering between madness and cold-blooded calculation. Wuornos was cremated, her ashes taken to her home state of Michigan by a childhood friend. Unlike most killers on this list, her grave does not lie in secrecy. Her remains rest in a marked plot. Yet her legacy is one of enduring infamy. A woman who turned America's highways into hunting grounds, leaving behind questions that still unsettle criminologists today. Number 13. Janie Lou Gibbs, the Poisoning Mother. Janie Lou Gibbs seemed like a devoted church-going mother from Georgia. But in the 1960s, she concealed a secret as dark as any in American true crime. Between 1966 and 1967, she poisoned 5 of her closest family members: her 3 sons, her husband, and her grandson. Each death was explained away as illness, until patterns too disturbing to ignore began to surface. Her method was chilling in its intimacy. She laced their food with arsenic, watching as they weakened and died. Neighbors pitted her as tragedy after tragedy struck the Gibbs household. In truth, she was collecting life insurance policies, turning her own family into a source of profit. Suspicion arose only after the death of her grandson. Autopsies revealed lethal doses of poison, and the truth of Janie's crimes was finally uncovered. In 1967, she was arrested and confessed to the murders. Convicted, she was sentenced to 5 life terms in prison. Later, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and paroled in 1999, only to die 7 years later in a nursing home. Her burial was quiet, her grave deliberately kept low profile to avoid desecration. While her victims rest in marked family plots, Gibbs herself lies in anonymity. The smiling churchwoman who poisoned her own blood is remembered not for devotion, but for betrayal that still chills the small Georgia town she once called home. Number 14. Karen Harrington, the child killer. Karen Harrington, a woman from Cork, Ireland, became the face of unthinkable cruelty when she was convicted in 2022 for the murder of 2-year-old Santina Cawley. The toddler, left in her care overnight, suffered a shocking 53 injuries before her death. The case horrified the nation, not only because of the brutality, but because the killer was someone entrusted to protect an innocent life. Neighbors recalled hearing the child's cries in the early hours, but no one imagined the violence unfolding behind Harrington's door. When paramedics arrived, Santina's broken body bore marks of relentless assault. The details of the injuries were so graphic that even seasoned investigators described the scene as one of the most disturbing they had ever encountered. In court, Harrington showed little remorse, denying responsibility despite overwhelming evidence. The trial became one of Ireland's most high-profile murder cases, laying bare the darkest side of human nature: the betrayal of a child by an adult who should have been her guardian. Harrington was sentenced to life imprisonment, ensuring she would never walk free again. Her final resting place is yet to be decided, but it will carry no honor. Like other infamous child killers, Her grave will almost certainly be unmarked and hidden from the public. The nation mourns Santina, whose small grave is visited with flowers and tears, while Harrington's fate is to vanish into obscurity, forgotten, except for the horror she caused. Number 15. Charlotte and Linda Mulhall, the Scissor Sisters. Charlotte and Linda Mulhall, later dubbed Ireland's Scissor Sisters, committed one of the country's most gruesome crimes in 2005. The sisters brutally murdered their mother's abusive boyfriend, Faraswela Noor, in a Dublin flat. After stabbing him repeatedly, they dismembered his body with kitchen knives and scissors, a detail that cemented their chilling nickname. The crime shocked Ireland not just for its savagery, but for the disturbing aftermath. The sisters stuffed Noor's remains into bags and dumped them in the Royal Canal. Weeks later, parts of his body began washing ashore, horrifying locals and sparking a nationwide manhunt. His head was never recovered, leaving an unsettling gap in the story. During the trial, it was revealed that the killing followed years of abuse at the hands of Noor, but the brutality of the sisters' actions stunned even those sympathetic to their suffering. Charlotte and Linda were convicted of manslaughter and murder respectively, receiving lengthy prison sentences. Their calm demeanor in court only deepened the nation's unease. Charlotte died in prison in 2018, her body buried quietly, her grave kept discreet. Linda was released in 2018 after serving her term, but her life remains under heavy scrutiny. Noor's unmarked, incomplete grave lies without closure, while the sisters themselves are remembered in infamy, forever bound by the bloody name, the Scissor Sisters. Number 16. Catherine O'Connor, the River Killer. Catherine O'Connor, an Irish woman with a violent streak, became infamous in 2011 for the savage murders of two men. Her brutality shocked investigators. One victim was wrapped in electrical cable and dumped into a river, while another was discovered with more than 100 stab wounds. The sheer excess of her violence set her apart from ordinary killers. Her crimes revealed a chilling pattern. Rage turned to slaughter, with bodies discarded as though they were refuse. Forensic experts struggled to explain the ferocity of the attacks, suggesting a mix of deep-seated anger and uncontrolled impulse. The killings terrorized the community, leaving families bewildered by the senselessness of it all. In court, O'Connor's cold demeanor contrasted sharply with the horror of her crimes. She offered no real explanation, no glimpse of remorse, as if the destruction she caused had no weight in her mind. She was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, cementing her place among Ireland's most notorious female killers. Like others on this list, her final resting place will not be publicly recorded. When death comes, prison authorities will ensure anonymity, her grave marked only in official records, hidden from public view. The men she murdered are remembered by loved ones at their gravesides, while Catherine O'Connor will eventually be buried in silence, her violence fading into the shadows, but never forgotten. Number 17. Martha Herda, the Drowning Killer. Martha Herda, a Polish woman living in Ireland, carried out one of the country's most unusual and chilling murders in 2013. Herda deliberately drove her car through a barrier and into the icy waters of Arklow Harbor with her colleague, Caesary, trapped in the passenger seat. As the vehicle sank, Martha swam to safety, but left him to drown. Investigators soon uncovered the twisted motive. Caesary had been infatuated with her, a man she no longer wanted in her life. Instead of walking away, she chose a fatal solution. The act was planned. She drove directly toward the water, ensuring his escape was impossible. The harbor became both the crime scene and the victim's grave. In court, Herda denied intending to kill, portraying it as a tragic accident. But forensic evidence showed otherwise. She had control, she had choices, and she made none to save him. Jurors were unmoved by her claims, convicting her of murder in 2016. She was sentenced to life in prison. Herda remains incarcerated, her grave yet to be written in history. But when her time comes, she will almost certainly be buried in anonymity, far from the waters where she sealed her victim's fate. The man who once adored her lies remembered, while she herself will be consigned to a grave as cold and hidden as the harbor depths she turned into a coffin. Number 18. Rose Lynch, Ireland's female assassin. Rose Lynch holds the grim distinction of being Ireland's only known female contract killer. In 1994, she was recruited by criminal associates to carry out a gangland-style execution in Limerick. Armed with a pistol, she approached her target and pulled the trigger. But in a chilling twist, she shot the wrong man. The victim, an innocent father of 3, had no ties to organized crime. His senseless death revealed not only Lynch's ruthlessness, but also the chaotic brutality of Ireland's underworld at the time. The press labeled her an assassin, a woman who shattered expectations by stepping into a role usually dominated by men. Her trial drew intense attention. Prosecutors painted a picture of a cold, calculating killer, while her defense attempted to frame her as a pawn in the violent games of others. The jury was unmoved. Lynch was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Her notoriety cemented in Irish criminal history. When she eventually died, her burial was handled without public notice. There was no gravestone, no chance for her name to draw unwanted fascination. While her victim rests in a family grave tended by loved ones, Lynch's remains were hidden away. The assassin who misfired her mark has vanished into anonymity, her final resting place as secretive as the world of crime that once consumed her. Number 19. Lavinia Fisher, the boarding house murderess. Lavinia Fisher, often described as America's first female serial killer, operated an inn on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina, in the early 1800s. Travelers who checked in often never checked out. Along with her husband John, she is said to have poisoned guests with tea and then sent them to bed, where rigged furniture would drop victims into a pit to be finished off. Though historians debate the legends surrounding her methods, there is little doubt that several men disappeared after encountering the Fishers. The couple preyed on lonely travelers moving through a lawless frontier, turning hospitality into a deadly trap. Fear spread quickly, and local authorities finally acted. In 1820, Lavinia and John were arrested and sentenced to death. On the gallows, Lavinia refused to repent. Dressed in her wedding gown, she famously declared she would see everyone in hell before leaping from the platform herself, a final act of defiance that cemented her infamy. Her body was buried in a potter's field near the jail, in an unmarked grave reserved for criminals. No monument was ever erected, and her precise resting place remains uncertain. Yet her story lives on, part fact, part folklore. The boarding house is long gone, but whispers of Lavinia Fisher's ghost still drift through Charleston, a reminder that her grave may be hidden, but her legend refuses to die. Number 20. Countess Elizabeth Báthory, the Blood Countess. Countess Elizabeth Báthory of Hungary, remembered as the Blood Countess, stands among history's most infamous women. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, she was accused of torturing and murdering hundreds of young girls. Legends claim she bathed in their blood to preserve her youth, though historians argue myth and truth have long been entwined in her story. Testimonies from servants described a castle of horror, girls lured with promises of work, then beaten, burned, or mutilated at the hands of the Countess and her accomplices. Estimates of her victims range from dozens to as many as 600, making her one of the deadliest women in recorded history. Unlike most killers, Báthory was never formally executed. Her noble status protected her from the gallows. Instead, in 1610, she was walled up in a chamber of her own castle at Cactus, with only a small slit for food and air. For 4 years she languished there, cut off from the world, until her death in 1614. Her burial was conducted in secrecy. Initially interred in the family crypt, her remains were soon removed after locals demanded her body be expelled. The final location of her grave is unknown, erased to prevent it from becoming a shrine or a curse upon the land. To this day, Elizabeth Báthory's bones remain lost to history, her legacy a blend of nightmare and myth entombed in shadows.